make it better? How can I do what is right? It is a predominant question. Why am I here? And what can I do to make it better? How can I do what is right? It is a predominant question. Why am I here? And what can I do?
It's been a hard year for me. I've spent an awful lot of the past 12 months just sitting alone in my room. Usually I enjoy this alone time. I'm absolutely a person who enjoys my personal space, but this year it's been different. For an introvert, being alone doesn't always translate to being lonely, but this year I've been alone and it's been lonely. I won't go into detail, that isn't what I wanted to write about, but having this different time to myself, this alone time, has made me think a lot about the things I actually feel when I experience true loneliness. I've always reacted terribly to isolation. The thought of being in a room with hundreds of people but not being able to interact with any of them makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. I used to look around my exam halls and my school assemblies and see the faces of my classmates and peers, but I saw nothing human. They were people, but they weren't alive. Outside of these situations, I always put these feelings to the back of my mind. It was just me being anxious and strange, right? When I first started playing video games at a young age, my brother showed me Goldeneye. And we all know how great it was, how influential it was. It defined console shooters of the age. But personally, I never enjoyed it. I never really played it much on my own, and even playing split screen with 2 or 3 friends felt off, and I could never pinpoint why it did. Other games of the era like Perfect Dark and Star Fox weren't the same, and I enjoyed playing them over and over. Goldeneye just felt wrong. Why is that? It took me a long time to work it out until I replayed the game recently. And the majority of the game is fine. It's Goldeneye, it's a first person shooter, it's an N64 game. And then you reach Surface 2. Set in a snowy wasteland at night time, you're dropped into this huge map that somehow feels claustrophobic. The fog feels like it was placed too close to you, and enemies seemingly materialise at will and chase you down until you finally reach the final objective and make your way inside a bunker, at which point this plays. I'm not sure Goldeneye is remembered as much for its jump scares as it is for its gameplay. But even before I finished the mission, as I played, I was filled with unease, a sensation I remember experiencing a lot when I first played Goldeneye. These soldiers kept coming at me, but because of the snow they were wearing masks, they were faceless. There was no speech, the developers only used subtitles in Goldeneye, and the music is dark and eerie. The best word I can use to describe it is lonely, but it's a dark loneliness, a hostile loneliness. Goldeneye, intentionally or unintentionally, made me feel isolated. The worlds are empty and lifeless. Even in multiplayer, if you stop shooting each other and just walk around, there's so much empty space. None of the areas feel real, everything is artificial. It feels like there should be more, but there isn't. I understand that this is a design choice that reflects the restrictions of the era and the lack of space available on a console, but there are more modern games that are intentionally designed to feel this way.
In the psychology of the modern civilized human being, it is difficult to overstate the significance of the house.
The most obvious example of this is Anatomy by Kitty Horrorshow. I've never been able to finish a playthrough of Anatomy, even though I know there are no jump scares. Nothing is going to come out and attack me, I'm just going to listen to tapes that make me feel more and more uncomfortable. And yet, I can't finish it. It makes me feel so wrong, almost unnatural. So I often just shut it off and either watch the rest of the game or do something else entirely. The difference is though, Anatomy is a horror game. It was intentionally designed to make you feel this horrible unease, like there is something behind you, even when there isn't. It's why games like Slender and PT are so scary. You know something is behind you, even if there's nothing behind you. But Goldeneye is just a shooter. It's silly, it's campy, it has a terrible rendition of Robbie Coltrane in it. The majority of the missions are fine, but Surface 2 isn't. I can play it, but it will always make me feel the same unease I get when that fucking screaming tape plays in Anatomy. Maybe not as intense, but it's still there. In a similar vein, I could never get into Shadow of the Colossus, because the thought of exploring this vast but empty world made me uncomfortable. It's not the fact that there's nothing in the world, because there certainly is an awful lot to explore and find, but more that there's no trace of anything at all human, barring a few ruins and the colossi you kill for no real reason. You don't particularly feel guilty for killing them, you just feel wrong. Unnatural. I've given a lot of thought to this sensation, because you would expect all games of the same genre or setting to feel the same. But if you play Breath of the Wild, there are times when you feel lonely, sure, but you never feel this isolation. It's never hostile. The world is rich and beautiful, and there are animals that interact with each other, and places to explore and secrets to find. Even when I first started playing Minecraft and the only living things other than myself were the monsters, I still didn't feel alone. I could build whatever I wanted and give myself the illusion of civilization in the world. I guess that was enough. The feeling I get from Anatomy, Shadow of the Colossus and especially Goldeneye can only really be described as dreamlike. That feeling when you know you're in a nightmare even though everything is outwardly normal. You're waiting for something awful to happen, but you aren't sure if it ever will. Anatomy was intentionally designed to make you feel uneasy in your house, the place where you usually feel safest. Shadow of the Colossus was intentionally designed to feel empty and make you feel conflicted about the colossi you were killing. But what about Goldeneye? Why does it feel so wrong? It opened the door to a whole new genre of console shooters, but I still can't really play it because of this dreamlike, uncomfortable feeling it gives me. I think a lot of games intentionally try to make you feel lonely and uncomfortable, but not many have made me feel truly isolated in the way Goldeneye does, especially in Surface 2. Was it just a fluke?